is a bit like the little aliens in Toy Story waiting for the claw to pick them. That it's like you are very, very similar to lots of other people also trying to produce work that is meaningful and great and good, and that gives you some fulfillment, and this claw will just kind of pick you at random for you to be the special one, which ends up being really disheartening. So you end up having a kind of disproportionate amount of gratitude to this claw that's kind of picked you seemingly a bit at random, that you then have so much gratitude, it means you're less likely to check your contract and see, like, am I actually being paid very well, and are the terms any good? All of that sort of stuff, which it is not good for us as workers. So I wanted to make a little video today just about trying to have a good life as someone who works in the arts, and about how tricky that is. I wanted to start off with the fact that a lot of the discourse, in the past at least, around theatre work, where I work mainly, is around making work that is of good artistic quality. It's not necessarily about us having good lives. Now, of course, making things that we enjoy, that we think are valuable, that we derive pleasure from, like, that's part of having a good life. But all too often, I think the drive to make work of good quality, either simply for the love of it or because it might further our careers, can be to the detriment to the rest of our lives. Anyone who works in the arts knows about this. It's about, like, throwing your all into a particular project, and that might mean that you don't have time for anything else, any other facets of your life. It also might mean that you get paid a tiny amount compared to the amount that you worked. We as workers in the theatre, and I think this goes for plenty of places in the arts and probably outside of the arts as well, are caught between two distinct perspectives. So there's ourselves as workers and ourselves as artists. So as an artist, I want to make fantastic work with care and heart and enthusiasm that pushes me and my collaborators into interesting directions and explores the boundaries of the art form, and may mean, you know, spending endless hours working on it. But as a worker, I want decent breaks, convenient hours, to be treated fairly and paid properly, to have time outside of work to relax, explore different facets of my life, etc., etc. So sometimes these two perspectives can be in tandem, but most of the time they are in conflict with each other. And I think sometimes we as arts workers who get into the game because we absolutely love it and, you know, we would die and kill for it, we then start thinking, well, this would make it easier for me to make this work, or this needs to change, or this needs to change. Often that's not about pay, or hasn't been in the past. I think we've seen a bit of a turn in radicalisation, actually, especially among creative teams. So that's directors, designers, lighting designers, sound designers, who are all getting very frustrated with the fact that they're paid in fees, but them as artists, they want to work on it as much as possible in order to make something that is brilliant and worthwhile. But because they're paid these set fees, it means that every hour that they work means that every hour they're being paid less for their time, if that makes sense. And this drive that's in us to create good work, you know, despite the scarcity of resources, that ends up meaning stage managers fulfill roles that are not their job in order to make the first stagger through happen straight after lunch. It means actors learning lines without payment, which is a hell of a lot of work just so that they can make sure that the scenes bang as soon as possible in the rehearsal room. And all of this is kind of part of this mantra that the show must go on. So it's maybe unsurprising then that in our industry, while other trade unions are discussing transitioning to a 4-day work week, we'd be lucky to limit our work weeks to 5 days. And incidentally, that is actually one of the demands in Equity's Stand Up for 17% campaign on the West End at the moment, is to change to 5-day rehearsal weeks. Currently, we can work 6 days and only have 1 day off to rest and get all our errands done and all that sort of stuff. And so changing to a 5-day work week, hopefully that changes the culture and we just say, no, we're not working on Saturdays anymore. So knowing this, what do we do about it? It's very difficult for trade unionists to navigate the arts work when this kind of line between worker and hobbyist is so blurry. And it means we've got a lot of very privileged people in the industry. I think what the number is, like 6.5% of the of the country went to private school, but they make up something like 24% of the arts, which, suggests a level of financial stability in those people, that they don't have to work if they don't need to, or if the project isn't right, which means that people can engage in more passion projects that are more about the creative drive behind the work as opposed to working in order to live. Whereas, the majority of us have to think about money. But, sometimes our work can be nourishing, it can be illuminating, bring us a sense of collective joy and purpose. Or we might see this work as a kind of stepping stone to work that is more fulfilling but is just over the horizon. I think a lot of people can kind of spend their whole careers, their whole lives, just waiting for that amazing job just over the horizon. I often think that wait is a bit like the little aliens in Toy Story waiting for the claw to pick them. That it's like you are very, very similar to lots of other people also trying to produce work that is meaningful and great and good, and that gives you some fulfillment, and this claw will just kind of pick you for you to be the special one, which ends up being really disheartening. So you end up having a kind of disproportionate amount of gratitude to this claw that's kind of picked you seemingly a bit at random, that you then have so much gratitude, it means you're less likely to check your contract and see, like, am I actually being paid very well, and are the terms any good? All of that sort of stuff, which it is not good for us as workers. And then often our work is not quite as pleasurable as we might have imagined. At times the work can be exhausting and all-consuming, our employment being in the hands of people who are also precariously employed and going through similar bouts of being underworked or being overworked and underpaid. So casting directors and directors are often employed on a kind of freelance contract to contract basis, and it just means that everyone is scrabbling for work all the time, and then feeling grateful or having to see like the ultimate good in whatever they're doing. And a lot of that can be exhausting, and it means that we as individuals have so much gratitude that we don't then think collectively, do we need to change this? Do we need to exert some power? And it makes sense, because we might be worried that we then won't get work if we try to exert some power. But of course, that's where unionising comes in. And I think us understanding when we're assuming one perspective over another, the artist or the worker, can be really, really helpful, because we have different needs. So as an artist, you need craft and passion, and as a worker you need solidarity, militancy and good tactics in order to get better terms and conditions and live a better life. But obviously solidarity in our industry is really, really tricky, because the number of people in our industry currently out of work vastly outnumber those in work, and the search for work can be absolutely soul-sapping. So it's no wonder that people are so often filled with like a kind of disproportionate gratitude towards, the employer, rather than inclined to check the terms of their contract. There's a quote from the economist Joan Robinson back in the day, who said, the misery of being exploited by capitalists is nothing compared to the misery of not being exploited at all. I just think like this is a great quote, because it's as true of our industry as it is of any industry. The misery of performing in a show that is poorly reviewed, you don't enjoy doing it 6 days a week, the majority of your time you're just doing this, and the pay isn't very good. That misery is nothing compared to the misery of auditioning for years without getting a job and worrying about what people will think if you quit. Now, I don't have any super clear answers to these problems, only to say that we have to really interrogate how we're to navigate arts work as trade unionists. The difficulties are many, but the opportunities are too, and I think it's our job as trade unionists to find the pinch points and go after them with everything we've got. So if you are active in your union already, that's great, please keep going, but if you're not, you really should be, especially at this time in equity. I think we're going through a really exciting period where we are kind of going industrial first with it. It's not a service, it is a union in which we all collectivise in order to get better terms, conditions and pay. So yeah, get involved with equity if you can, and let's navigate these problems together, because they're really tricky. Solidarity, comrades. See you later.